Welcome, I'm Doug. Recently I've been writing about my personal beliefs in nihilism. I believe it does not have to be what everyone thinks. It's not the dreary, rainy, dark outlook on reality filled with pessimism. I think meaning can be found in nihilism, and I think the world needs someone to tell them that even in the worst philosophical scenario, it's worth living. Now, what is this morality? I have to make this clear. This is not objective, but a near universal subjective set of morals. I call this joint morality, a system composed of principles that each require context, interacting principles, and the conclusion. The beautiful thing here, too, is you can use any system you want to judge the conclusions. For example, utilitarianism or Kantian ethics, whatever it is. This idea exists as a framework that works within nihilism rather than a moral system itself. How can morality exist in nihilism where everything is meaningless? This is a complex question within my philosophy, but if I were to summarize digestibly, my answer is that, from your perspective, things feeling like they matter is where meaning comes from. It's all in our heads, but it exists there attached to our reality. The universe holds no meaning, but why would it? A bunch of rocks and nothing. However, we're not viewing the world from absolute objectivity, but from a conscious subjectivity. Essentially, what I'm getting at here is that because your favorite thing matters to you, that holds meaning. I call it the seeding principle of emotion, the idea that emotions inherently matter in the subjective reality we view it from, and we ought to act in accordance with such spiritually grounded significance. Just like how we protect our kids and animals so strongly, those things hold meaning because we think it does. This belief system has implications on free will and other aspects of philosophy, but for now, I'm going to keep it simple and move on to morality, okay? The way this works is like Akinator. Have you heard it? It's a game where you think of a character, answer a series of questions, and Akinator will guess the character you're thinking of. But how does Akinator have all this knowledge of characters? Because when Akinator does not know a user's character, the user inputs it into the database, thus spreading out the information inputting process across millions of people. Joint morality is analogous. I think of it like a database filled with moral principles, what to do and what not to do, with near infinite variations of even little moral subjects. So how is a moral principle created? Well, you pick out your situation's context. For example, someone stealing from someone. The context there is vague, so a little restriction is necessary. Let's say the context is stealing that is done for no other reason than a greedy coveting of what belonged to somebody else. Now we must draw together the interacting principles. Just keep in mind, these are just examples, so you do not have to keep track of all of them. Our base ones will come from the seeding principle of emotion. So, the first that comes to my mind would be how people prefer stability over instability in the things they care about. Our context will be people prefer the things that matter to them to be stable and receive negative emotions if such is unstable. Now, the only interacting principle here is the original seeding principle of emotion. Therefore, we may now claim the principle of stability in moral standings, according to our joint morality. Also, extending the seeding principle, if we know each other's states of minds and are affected personally by them in a way that matters to us, and ought to act on what matters, you ought to consider and act on others' well-being, creating the principle of empathized meaning. Sorry if that was a lot. Essentially, if you care about others' experiences, that affects you, and it affects you that in a way that matters, then according to the seeding principle, you ought to act on it. Switching gears, if we ought to protect the principle of stability and acknowledge the principle of empathized meaning, this statement bursts the principle of protection, where people ought to protect the stability in things that matter to others. You can then say that the thief violated the principle of protection out of nothing but greed. The conclusion is that such is a moral and joint morality and ought not to be done. However, some people cannot apply joint morality to themselves, like psychopaths. They find it impossible to care about other emotions, and therefore the principle of empathized meaning doesn't exist in their heads. These people exist outside the system, essentially. Therefore, stealing isn't wrong within their version of joint morality, and the action remains only a matter of external consequences rather than internal ones. This has implications on the morality of an action. To summarize, people can only be moral if they feel that moral obligation. Otherwise, they exist within a more meaningless version of reality that holds only more surface, less limiting emotions. I could make a whole video on explaining this and free will and whatnot, which I do want to do, so I hope to see you there. Anyway, this principle cannot be referred to as, say, the principle of greedy theft. I know that was kind of complex, but a system like this has to be structured. The goal when I was dreaming this up was to create a system on a single premise that was felt powerfully and near universally to be true, so it can exist within the subjective reality of the viewer. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any counter arguments, I'd love to hear them in the comments, and have a good day.